Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, there's been a remarkable shift in social attitudes towards homosexuality in recent years. In fact, the whole idea has changed from homosexuality to LGBTQ+. So it's amazing to think that Section 28 is 30 years old today. The now repealed clause of a local government act to stop councils promoting the teaching of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. That is a quote from the act. No one was successfully prosecuted under it, but it did have an effect on teaching. And to many, it simply seemed intended to stigmatise the gay community. Perhaps it even contributed to the strength of the identity politics we're now so familiar with. Well, the prominent gay writer and journalist Matthew Todd, he was editor at Attitude magazine for many years, was in school in those days and looks back now at the effect the act had.
There's my school picture. There I am, 14. This was actually 1988, the year that Section 28 came in. I think I was a very flamboyant, over-the-top, kind of performing teenager at that time, but inside I was traumatised and frightened the whole time. I desperately needed to talk to somebody, and I was sat here with a teacher, trembling, skirting around it. I mean, I was quite an effeminate child, and I think probably he would have picked up on the fact that other kids, would call me, queer and so on. But I felt like he was scared of specifically addressing it. I'm sure the reason for my teacher's reticence was Section 28.
Now the rest of the news. The government is to ban the promotion of homosexuality in schools.
Section 28 was enacted 30 years ago in a climate that was very different for LGBT people.
I obviously don't want children taught that the gay and lesbian lifestyle is natural or normal. It is not, it never has been, and it never will be.
As ordinary men and women.
Back then, you could be fired for being gay, homophobic headlines were a daily occurrence, gay people portrayed as a menace to society. 75% of the British public believed homosexuality was always or mostly wrong.
I hesitate to use the word perversion, but let's face up to the truth of this situation. That's what it is.
Despite mass protests and a campaign of civil disobedience, Section 28 became law in 1988.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay.
Supporters said its intention was to safeguard traditional family values and protect children. For me and my school friends, it was devastating. I went to school with Simon Marks and Alexander Smith. They too were bullied, struggling and desperate for support.
I very much felt like I had nowhere to turn at school, and so it was something that I was feeling before Section 28 came in, and that just almost felt like, well, this seals the deal. You are this disgusting pervert that we were told about in the newspapers.
Simon's primary school head did act by visiting his family home.
Because he was worried that if I chose a life of homosexuality, as he called it back then, I would be lonely. So he outed me to my parents, to the school. I was 10, so it was pretty devastating, to be honest. I felt like my world came crashing in.
So you'd say that Section 28 has negatively affected your life?
Absolutely, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. All of those negative messages internalised made me hate myself.
To a lawyer, these words must look like 3 cherries in a fruit machine, and particularly the verb promote, because nobody knows what the courts will decide it means.
The vague wording of Section 28 left teachers uneasy about tackling homophobic bullying.
Simply talking about homosexuality, you could be accused of promoting it. Simply talking to somebody as homosexual, you could be accused of promoting it if you talk about their needs.
This is the book without which Section 28 would not have happened. It's called Jenny Lives with Eric and Martin, and it's a children's picture book about a young girl who lives with her two gay fathers. The Sun splashed it across their front page with the headline, "Vile Book in School," and its reported availability in schools and pictures like this one caused outrage.
Our major concern has been that small children, some as young as 5, when they start school, have actually had homosexuality thrust at them. There has been a promotional exercise on very young children indeed.
Baroness Knight was one of the key architects of Section 28.
There were probably about 50 sets of parents, fathers and mothers, and they came to see me about this matter and asked me to try and do something. It wasn't about stopping homosexuals, it was about saving children, which is a different thing.
But for so many children, Section 28 did the opposite of protect them. Charles, how old were you when Section 28 was brought in?
I was 14. I remember it because of the Boy George single, No Section 28, which I remember seeing in the record shop.
When Charles was 16, boys at his boarding school found a gay magazine under his mattress. He felt forced to deny his sexuality then, and did so for years to come. The stress of it eventually drove him to drink and drugs. And 6 years ago, while high, Charles jumped off a London flyover. He's now in and out of a wheelchair. Do you believe there is a direct link between what happened to you at school and Section 28 and that atmosphere and your accident?
I think I made 101 bad decisions in life that I made. But yes, no one operates in a vacuum, and the idea that I had to be rigorously obsessed with who did or didn't know about my sexuality was really what ushered me down the first of those bad paths.
But Section 28 did, however, galvanise an entire generation of gay activists, like Boone Temple and Sally Francis. Sally abseiled into the House of Lords as they debated the law, and Boone was one of the women who stormed the BBC 6 o'clock news live on air.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock. In the House of Lords, a vote is taking place now on a challenge to the poll tax. Tory rebels have said...
We at least had to mark the moment, had to get people to know that this terrible, terrible thing was happening.
Protesting about rights for lesbian and gay people.
What would you say to people who would say, well, it was kind of pointless because it was happening, we lost?
We're talking about it now, today, 30 years of the anniversary, and we're hearing about people like yourself who it countered their feeling of isolation.
It was state-promoted homophobia. That's a terrible, terrible thing. It's not a nothing. It's not like it doesn't matter and it didn't matter. It still matters.
Section 28 was repealed 15 years ago, but Baroness Knight still believes she did the right thing. Though one thing she said did surprise me.
The intention was the well-being of children. And if I got that wrong, well, I'm sorry. All I was trying to do was acting on what people wrote to me, said to me, what the papers said sometimes, perhaps.
Life for LGBT people has transformed. Today, schools like mine stamp out trans and homophobia, but it remains unchecked in others. LGBT people still suffer higher rates of depression, addiction, and homelessness. Until we tackle these issues, we'll still have failed to undo the legacy of this most pernicious homophobic policy.
The journalist Matthew Todd reporting there.
I've been getting